podcast with Michelle True.
Welcome back, family. You are watching the Say Something podcast with your girl, Michelle True. If you have not caught up, I'm going to have to stop you right here and tell you to go back and watch the first 3 episodes. There's a lot of prior knowledge that is needed before you move forward. The first 3 episodes were written about poems that I wrote over 10 years ago. But this 4th episode is still fresh. It is still very new. I wrote this poem less than 2 years ago, and I am still processing. I am still trying to figure out all that it encompasses. So as you go on this journey with me today, understand that God is still working on me in this area of my life. But I felt like it was necessary to give you this poem today as number 4, even though it wasn't quite the plan. But as I was finishing episode 3, my son came to me with a dream that he had, and I will not speak it into existence. But I heard God say to me so loud and clear, "You gave your father flowers while he was still living, and it is time for you to give your mother hers while she still is." And my first thought was, for what? Give her flowers for what? Then God immediately pierced my heart and reminded me of the many reasons why my mother deserves her flowers today. This poem was not written about my mom. I can't even say we were on good speaking terms when I wrote this piece. It was actually written for my daughter. It was written for who I aspire to be as a mom, despite or in spite of who my mother was, her presence, and her absence in my life. I was telling a good friend about my podcast, and I mentioned to her that it's my poetic testimony, and that is kind of preachy and very religious. And then she started going on some rant about the American church, and I let her. And then I responded that yes, there are some traditions and some church culture that we could probably do away with and that are not a part of the kingdom. But my reality is that my story does not exist without the presence of God in my life. The relationship that I have with my mother does not exist without God, without his love for me. Michelle does not make it without Jesus' sacrifice. Y'all don't hear me. Satan would have taken me out. He would have won. But God, I understand that Jesus came to dismantle the religious folks, the Pharisees and Sadducees of his day. And we are not to be self-righteous like them. We are not supposed to just go through the motions and simply follow the law and forget how to treat people. And how? am I supposed to treat my own mother despite what I have been through? I'm supposed to love. I'm supposed to love her because love conquers all. So today, as we go on this journey, I give you the poem, Mini Me. Mini Me. I am who I am as a mother because of my mother. I knew that when I had a little girl, I would give her the world. And she would never feel abandoned, unwanted, or unloved. She would always know that she was cherished in my heart from the very start. Before she was conceived in my womb, she was my prayer to be the heir to my throne. You see, as a child, I didn't know I was a princess. I felt more like a damsel in distress. I didn't have big dreams. I wasn't allowed to be wild and free. There were so many strongholds preventing me from being me. Do as I say, not as I do. Children are to be seen and not heard. But there was always a little bird telling my spirit that there is more. And more is what I desire to give her. She came into this world on February 2nd, more than ready for her debut. She came in like, kablam, here I am, I'm good, how about you? She was inquisitive from the very start. I could tell she was going to be smart and nosy. She hated riding in the car seat, hated facing the back where she could not see. She wanted to flee from all the restrictions on her little body so she could be ready for whatever the world had in store. As she grew, so did her point of view. The girl was wise beyond her years and could break it down for her peers. She didn't crawl, she would scoot. She loved spicy food and fruit. And words. Words came to her quickly, and she would talk your head off. And because of her bronchitis, she always had a little cough. That Aquarius inside of her allowed her to move like water and just go with the flow. She adapted to people and her environment. She sees adversity as an opportunity to change people's perspective. And she is 100% okay with being the weird one out of the bunch. Just one of the reasons why I love her so much. She is everything I wish I was as a child. She is free to believe and to speak, always using her voice to defend the meek. She never shows weakness unless I'm braiding her hair. She embraces her boldness and is not afraid to stand up for herself, her brother, or others. Her creativity flows into her poetry, her artistry, and her selectivity of friends. She is a scientist, always wanting to know how and why things work the way they do. She stays true to herself and is enthusiastic as she embraces her quirkiness. She knows she is meant to stand out in a crowd, never blend in, never dim her light. She shines so bright. She is my Groundhog Day baby, but I refuse to let her relive my sins over and over again. She may physically look like my mini me, but she will be bigger, better, faster, stronger, more educated, less manipulated, better compensated, and more decorated. She will be better articulated and communicative, more reflective and inclusive, and have the ability to see perspective from a global point of view. And yes, she is cute, but she knows that it is far more important to be smart and lead with your heart. She knows that she should not bury her God-given talents, for her talents will make room for her and bring her before great people, allowing her to share her passions and purpose with the world. Beautiful, I just want you to know you're my favorite girl. I am who I am as a mother because of my mother. I knew when I had a little girl, I would give her the world, and she would never feel abandoned, unwanted, or unloved. She would always know that she is cherished in my heart from the very start. Before she was conceived in my womb, she was my prayer to be the heir to my throne. And as she grows, I aim to implant all of my wisdom inside of her so that her queendom will be more than many. It will be fully grown. I know I often use my sense of abandonment as a reason to justify who I am. And even though it is something that I realize is so prominent in my life and how I deal with people in all of my relationships, I need the world to know that I have forgiven my mother for her choices. As a child, I didn't understand how a mother could leave her babies. But hearing her side of her story, I get it. I think I have to go back to give you guys some context to truly understand my story. My mother left when I was less than 2 years old. When I was 8, I came home from school one day, and my dad told my brother and I that we were moving to Maryland. Maryland? Daddy, what's Maryland? It's the state where your mom and your sister lives. We're going to be a family. My mom, my sister, my mom. Now let me tell you that up until that point in my life, I thought my mother was dead. Because that was the only way my 8-year-old brain could comprehend a mother not being with her children. I heard and saw plenty of stories about men who left their families, but I never saw from the perspective of a woman leaving her family unless she was deceased. And my father never talked about her. So when he said we were moving to Maryland, my world changed instantly. We waited for the school year to end. We left Morehead City, North Carolina in the summer of 1992. One of my dad's friends drove us. We left almost everything. My dad took his big screen TV and enough work clothes for about a week. My twin and I had a couple of days worth of clothes in a trash bag. I think my dad felt guilty. He felt bad about leaving his girlfriend for his wife. So he let her and her kids keep everything. We arrived in Maryland at night, and I remember the street lights. Going from the country to the city was a big deal. My mom lived in one of those apartment buildings where you had to buzz people in. My dad called up, but she didn't come to the door. From the car, I could see somebody peeking through the window, but they didn't come to the door either. My dad walked down the street a little bit to the payphone and he made a call. He comes back to the car, he waits a couple of minutes, and then he buzzes again. And finally, the door opens. I questioned my dad about that situation when I got older. He told me he went to the payphone to call my great aunt, my mom's aunt. She told him that she would make a call and to go back and try the doorbell again. Try again, she would say. My great aunt, she told me those same words years later. I don't remember the exact timeline, but to me and my 8-year-old brain, it was between a week and a month before my mom left again. We stayed with her and my sister, and I thought we were going to be one big happy family. At least that's the picture my dad painted. But one night, I overheard a conversation between my parents. I heard my mom say, "I just want the twins." And my dad responded, "Either you take all 3 of us, or you take none of us." I say all that to say that she did come back for me, but my father was not having it. And literally as I type this, I'm thinking my father was dealing with a sense of abandonment himself. He did not want to be alone. You take all 3 of us or you take none of us, all or none. And he just wanted to be included. I thought, why not all of us? What's wrong with all of us? Never did I think, what did he do? My thoughts was, is it me? Did I do something wrong? Am I the problem? At the time, I had no idea of my mom's perspective. And if she would have tried to tell me back then, I would not have believed her. There was no way my daddy was the monster that she painted him to be. I could not fathom that he was a good father, but not a good husband. I could never tell her story, but as a woman, I tried to see my story from her perspective. My parents have a 7-year age difference. At the time they met, my mother was graduating high school and already pregnant with my sister. My dad had completed 6 years in the Marines. He had married and divorced his first wife. He traveled the world and he definitely saw some things. On top of his substance abuse with alcohol and his undiagnosed PTSD, my daddy was crazy, y'all. So I tried to put myself in my mother's shoes. What would I do with 3 young children at the age of 21, fighting for my life in my home? I didn't know my daddy, and my mother had just died. So I'm feeling abused, abandoned, and doubting my every decision. The first time she tried to leave, she told me that she took us with her. But my daddy came for his children. He said, it's all of us or none of us. And you can take my kids over my dead body. I could say what I would do if I was in her situation, but it would only be speculation, because the reality is I have no idea what I would really do if that was the ultimatum that I had. As a woman, I see strength in her leaving. I hope that if I was ever in an abusive relationship, I too would have the courage to leave and seek a better life. I pray that my daughter, my nieces, never experience an abusive relationship. But if they ever did, I pray that they too have the courage to walk away. I commend any woman who musters up the strength to get out of an abusive relationship, to find herself and to create a new life for herself. In episode 3, I stated that I was angry at my father after he passed away, because I felt like he didn't do everything in his power to get better. He didn't seek help for himself. But God convicted me. He said, how can you be mad at him for not seeking better, but then also mad at your mom for seeking better? Make it make sense. Make it make sense. And it didn't make sense. And that is why I am here today. Mom, I need you to know that I forgive you. I empathize with your situation. I can understand how much it must have hurt to walk away. But I know it would have hurt so much more to stay. And you don't have to keep apologizing for the past. I pray that God continues to bless you and pour favor all over your life. And as we try to rebuild this relationship, may God grant us time in what will be a roller coaster ride. In Jesus' name, amen. October 19, 2007. Dear Brenda, every time I look at my son, I ask myself, how could you leave? How could you walk away? How could you take one child and leave the rest? Not all the crying, diaper changing, money, or lack thereof could make me walk away from my child. Even if my son's father and I did not get along, I would never leave Jayon. Yet, so many years have gone by, and there has been little to no effort on your behalf to reconnect. When Aunt Shirley gave me your email address a month ago, I debated if I should write you, because I have been turned down by you so many times in the past. I tried so hard, but you ignored my phone calls and all of my voice messages. A child should never beg for their mother's love and attention. So this message is truly my last effort. If you choose to respond, then great. And if you don't, you never have to worry about hearing from me again. I used to think that I was the one missing out not having a mom. But it's really you who missed out and continue to miss out on the life of this beautiful young lady and your grandson. I would like for you to know him, and I would like for him to know you. But unfortunately, I have nothing positive to tell him about you. I don't wish to disrespect you or to be unkind. My father did not raise me that way. But you must know that I am hurt whenever I think about our situation, our lack of a relationship, and I wonder, what if? Whatever happened between you and my father over 2 decades ago is history. Life has moved on, and it should not hinder restoring what could be. As I already stated, this is my last plea. All my life, I've heard my father's side of the story, but now I want to hear yours. You can simply respond back to this email or call me anytime after 7 p.m. during the week and all day on the weekends. Your daughter, Michelle True. P.S. Is it just that easy to let one go and create another? Do you think back and say, I wish I could have changed something? Or are you satisfied with life as the way it is? We cannot predict the future, but we know that every action has a reaction. And with that, I leave you this poem just in case you choose not to respond. I'd like you to know what you missed. I wrote that email to my mom 1 month after my son was born. 2007 was a crazy year. My future mother-in-law passed in January. My future husband graduated college in May. We got married in July, moved from Indianapolis to Atlanta in August. We gave birth to my firstborn son in September, and I started my first teaching job in October. 2007 was a crazy year. I had always stayed in contact with my great aunt, kept her posted on my whereabouts. When I shared my son's photo with her via email, my aunt told me what she told my father years ago. Try again. Try again. So I wrote that letter as my last ditch effort. And finally, my mom opened the door. My intention was to let her be a better grandmother than she was a mom. My husband's mom was gone, and my mother was the only biological grandma he had left. I didn't want my son to be deprived of anything. I tell myself I reached out solely for him. But if I'm honest, it was for me too. You see, in college, I was jealous of my roommates who would call their moms every day and tell them about their day. I had an expectation of what a mother-daughter relationship should be. But my walls were up. I didn't want to be hurt again. My walls were up and I was on guard. I knew I needed to protect my heart and my son. But from 2007 to 2011, we had a decent relationship. My mom and my sisters would come and visit us in Georgia, and I would go home to DC to see them. We had a sensible, balanced relationship. But when I moved overseas, the relationship got weird. My sister straight up told me I don't want an internet relationship. And my mother pretended that she didn't have a Facebook account. I felt abandoned all over again. But I was so blessed overseas. So when I came home for the summer, I just played along with the phony games. Family dinners full of laughter and surface level conversations. Then we would go about our way. It wasn't until my dad got sick and passed away that I wanted more. But I didn't expect more. So I gave less. When my dad died, it was something inside of me that was like, I don't want to do this phony shit anymore. I don't want to pretend with y'all. My sister said something to me like, Mom doesn't act like this when you're not around. And I thought, nobody has to put on a show for me. I don't need this. I've been fine without y'all and I will be okay. My dad passed December 2nd, 2021. And from spring of 23 to December of 24, I barely spoke a word to my mother. But I never denied her access to her grandchildren because that was the intention in the first place, right? I just chose to remove myself from the equation. And in December of 2024, I told y'all, this is fresh. On December the 5th of 2024, 3 days after the 3rd year anniversary of my dad's passing, I said I wanted to change. I wanted to fix the relationship with my mother. And I knew it was my turn to open the door. The ball was in my court because the last conversation we had, I told her I didn't need anything from her. Didn't want anything from her. I wanted a break from all of the fake. I had to really decide how I was going to move forward. And my 41-year-old self, who was constantly seeking healing, I could only go forward in truth. I had many conversations with God about my mom, and I kept coming back to this point, so I knew that God wanted me to forgive and honor my mother. So now, I'm intentional about this relationship. I don't solely blame her. I know that there are many sides to a story. I know that we both have to be held accountable for our current actions. And I believe when I mend this relationship with the woman who gave me life, I will see a drastic change in every relationship that I have and every phase of my life.
This segment of the Say Something podcast is brought to you by the Queen's Tea. Take a sip, gulp, or whatever you need for your healing and keep on queening. This women's empowerment group can be found at their website, thequeenstea.intl.com, and at our Facebook group, The Queen's Tea International.
Like I said, I wrote this poem for my mini-me, my daughter, who actually turns 14 on the day that I am recording this video. I love her in a way that I wished I could have been loved by my mother. But I understand that she didn't have the capacity or capability to love me in that way. But when I look at my child, I see little Michelle. If little Michelle had the freedom to be seen and heard, if little Michelle had the freedom to express her emotions and feel like she didn't have to bottle everything up, if little Michelle had the freedom to be creative and innovative. When I look at my child, I see endless possibilities for her that I did not see for myself. But before she was born, I prayed for her. I prayed for every detail of her down to the hair on her head. And I believe that God gave her to me as a precious gift to nurture and love and to show her how to transcend higher than I ever did or ever will. She is my legacy, and I hope to pass my torch on to her as she remembers to always let her light shine and never dim it for anyone. Tupac Shakur has a song called Brenda's Got a Baby. Growing up, I always felt like that song was about me. No, my mom didn't leave me in a trash can. She left me with my dad. But because I felt discarded, and my mom's name is Brenda, I related. In episode 3, I told y'all that I was stuck in LA during COVID with my dad. Part of the reason that I was so miserable there was because I couldn't get to my babies. I didn't want them to think that I was abandoning them. It was really eating me up because it was always my ultimate goal as a mom to never make my kids feel like they were not wanted. I remind them every day that they were prayed for and that they are here on purpose. As an educator, I know the negative effects of trauma on the brain in early childhood. I know trauma can lead to disrupted attachment, impaired regulation, and hinder cognitive development. Also, the overdevelopment of some pathways and the underdevelopment of others can lead to an impairment later on in life. This can weaken a child's air traffic control system and may lead to reduced impulse control. I see and saw the effects of trauma on myself and my brother. I have fought my hardest to protect my children's brain in early development. I used to always say, I want to raise my children so they don't need therapy from me. Maybe from their dad or school or friends, but not from me. My girl Kanisha told me that that was impossible because it's not about how I give it, but it's how they perceive it. She taught me that perception is everything. I hope my children perceive me to be a good mom who tried really hard to give them above what I received. I wonder if they will say that I was a Proverbs 31 woman of God, someone who was there for them in their time of need, someone who protected them, someone who did what she thought was the best for them. As I look at my mini-me's, my son and my daughter, I thank God for giving me the opportunity to show up differently for them. I thank God that I have been able to give them life like no other, a life of travel and exposure to the world, a life of faith that they could do anything they put their minds to, and faith in God to believe it's possible. I don't take my job as a mother for granted. And with a 17 and 14-year-old, I know that they are leaving the nest soon to forge their own way. And I pray that they will use all the tools that I have given them to be successful. And I pray that they know that they can always come home. If they are struggling, I will be a great launching pad, a sounding board for them to come home, recalibrate, and get back out there and try again. Jayon, Isaiah, and Nala Lynn, remember that you are more than conquerors. You are the head and not the tail. You are above and not beneath. And you can do all things through Christ who gives you strength. And as long as God gives me the power, until I breathe my last breath, I will be here for you. And I love you. And Mom, your absence in my life pushed me to be bigger, better, faster, stronger. And I thank you. Maybe my drive wouldn't be what it is if you were present in my life. Maybe I would not have traveled the world. Maybe I would have simply settled and been content with being a school teacher in DC, but because of your absence and my rebellion, it pushed me to be greater. And even though I haven't quite obtained all that I desire to be, I am still working towards that thing every day. And your encouragement makes it that much better. So I end this podcast today saying again that I appreciate you. There are a lot of ifs and maybes, but today I choose to perceive this relationship as exactly as God intended it to be, exactly where He wants us to be. You have to go through to come to. And I pray that we have more time to build and to grow a deeper connection. In love, your middle daughter, Michelle True. So, what am I going to ask you to do today? Today's do something is simple. Go love on your mom. And if you don't have the best relationship, I know I'm the last person to tell anybody to go make it work. It has taken me a long time to get to this point. So if your relationship is not positive, I'm going to tell you to pray on that thing. Seek God's guidance on what He wants you to do. What steps does He want you to take forward? We like to hold our parents accountable. And to some degree, we should. But as adults, we have to also take accountability for our side of the equation. I know there are a lot of toxic people out there. So I'm not telling you to put yourself in harm's way, to break any of your barriers, and to not protect yourself. But what I am asking you to do is to look at the relationship from a different point of view, through different eyes, another perspective. Try to walk a mile in their shoes. That's all. It's been real, family. This is your girl, Michelle True. Peace, love, and blessings. Until next time.
Thank you, family, for tuning in to the Say Something podcast with Michelle True. Make sure you like and subscribe to be informed on when the next episode drops. And remember,